So this, I think we're gonna focus on playground stuff so that we gives us a good idea of the direction we're eventually headed in. And then we can focus on our current issues with those priorities in mind, right?
That's the idea.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I had a few like I didn't know if it's worth it if we want to try and like how we want to try and run this. I have a list of ideas that I have like been curating for a while now that like if we just want examples to start off with, we could start with that.
Yeah.
I also, for recording them, I have a mural. I don't know if I logged on for the first time like 5 minutes ago and they changed everything. So I don't know how useful it would actually be to try to do that. But if we want, like mostly do we want to try to like document this in a different way besides just taking normal notes or anything like that? I'm not really sure.
I think it's really convenient to be able to find all the notes in one place, because then we don't have to go like, okay, so what was the document called? As long as we link to whatever it is.
I
If
mean,
we
yeah,
link in the normal
linked
notes
it.
to whatever it is, that's fine. Me.
Okay, do you have thoughts from there? We also could just, it just might get a bit messy because we'll have a lot of different ideas, probably, and be going back. But okay.
So sorry, I got distracted, but so where did we, I'd love to see like some of the ideas. I think that's a great idea that you've already been collecting. Were we thinking Miro to do like a card sort kind of brainstorming exercise like we did?
Sort of, yeah, but I don't know how much. Yeah, like if we need something like that, we can do that. Or we could do that, but otherwise, it's just sort of. We could probably get the same thing done anyway, just in textual notes. It'll just be a lot more noting.
Okay.
And I'm happy to lead with that stuff since I can start and show you what just like the various things that I've been thinking of, but like not. But I'll probably take a backseat after that.
Okay. And obviously, like, we're all going to be reporting the things that we think make it easier for people, but they're not going to be the things we're doing. That's the risk with this kind of brainstorm.
Yeah, exactly.
But all right. Like it'd be great to like learn more from students. I can just say what things I've seen. Michelle, you can say what things you've seen. And I've been doing the work for other clients and stuff outside of the assembly line, so I can say like what things I think help others, people I'm working with, subcontractors and stuff. But it does make me wonder if there's a place where we need to pre-plan to get input from others. They're not developers.
Well, yeah, okay.
I mean, that will be form developers, but that aren't back-end developers like us. As I guess.
Yeah, sorry.
Form authors, not developers.
Yeah, sorry, authors is probably that's right. Don't do that. Okay. That's fair. I don't know. In that case, it's probably not super worth it to go over all these anyway. But like things that I just have are I don't know. This is just a list that just goes slightly over. Like some of these are kind of just normal. None of these are really. I don't know. I think the only big ones here are just like. So I'm mostly focusing on. Just like that. Was inline errors of just like being able to show things inline in the playground of closer to like what you would see if you had Visual Studio running or like Visual Code running or Visual Studio Code running, and you'd get like underline with a little like highlight or
Okay.
with like like this is wrong. I don't have any actual errors in this file yet, but the idea is the same. Then this one was sort of wackier of just like their, and I was also gonna, I think I was gonna say I curated this list to be more of just like any sort of developer experience, like author experience, as opposed to just the playground part. But it's still pretty similar to just like focused on like things that the authors are doing and not a ton of like DocAssemble features specifically. But the only one I was thinking of was if like using Python where you would normally use JavaScript, where like for the little tiny parts where like you have to use JavaScript for like show ifs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That could be Python. There's specific, there are ways you can directly run Python. There are also probably better ways that we could just directly compile Python into the thing we need it to be, or like the JavaScript. And I don't know how really worth it is if it's just gets rid of one of the like 5 different syntaxes you need to know to do DocAssemble development. At least for like really focused stuff. And a whole thing on the UI, but that's like a bigger thing we sort of already talked about.
But we were going to talk more about it. So we're going to talk about it. It can be now or later, but just pointing that out.
Yes, yeah, I know. I'm
Okay.
intentionally pushing it to later because I know it's going to be a bigger topic. And I was just sort of doing a lot of like rapid fire
Sure.
brainstormy ideas out there first.
Yeah.
Collaborative editing, which I think I got the idea just because I was looking at CodeMirror 6 things that it can do, and it can do collaborative editing. I think like have just multiple people like editing the same file at the same time. I don't know if that's a thing that developer like or DocAssemble authors really would use, and I can't think of it.
I would use it with
Yes, yeah,
things.
it was definitely useful for like it's definitely useful. I just don't know if it's like a super useful thing for everyone in their day-to-day stuff, or if it's sort of like, oh, I need help, like, can you guys help me and like have direct collaborative editing at the same time? And then again, that might be a thing that's super useful. I don't know. And the only specific thing that I think I was specifically sharing to get notes of or sharing my screen to sort of like show what I meant was I have been like looking a bit. I was also trying to get A to J author up and running before this in like the past hour, and the instructions they have in their README just don't work. So I couldn't get that up, but I was trying to like look and see if there's any like random developer experience things to steal, or like author experience things to steal. But for Twine, which I know I've mentioned a few times before, as just it's like a specific, it's just like a way of writing interactive fiction. It's kind of like on the surface, very similar to DocAssemble in terms of it shows a bunch of things, it gives you options, but it's much more directed in terms of like you click this option and you go and like here's a specific bit of net or text and you get 2 more options, and it's not as flexible as DocAssemble can be. But like a lot of the high level things that or like the high level idea of just like some sort of interactive piece of question answer are really similar. And so I've been sort of looking at their author experience and stealing things from that. And the only 2 things that I really liked are specifically, which is we can't do this, the bigger thing that is very obvious here, that is like the graph view of the entire story, or in our case would be like a graph view of the entire interview. Like that's not really a thing we'd probably be able to do well. I've seen various like academic projects on the DocAssemble Slack that try to do this, and that they get really complicated really quickly. And it's probably a benefit of DocAssemble that it doesn't show every single connection between everything. But one of the useful parts about it is that like you can see, okay, I know I have my like main menu part, and you could go to a random like for our purposes like question screen in the middle of the interview, and you can just go test from here, and it will automatically bring you straight to that that screen. And so you can see exactly what it looks like. And I think that's one of the things we had talked about a bit last week, of just like what the preview thing looks like. And this is what I've been having in mind, of just like if there's if this is a playground screen, and then we have like, oh, I'm editing this particular question block, there's a like test from here or preview button that then directly takes you and shows you and like renders it what it looks like or what it would look like in the doc, like in DocAssemble. And then the only other thing that I think is really useful that they have that I think people would appreciate is this thing called proof, where since these are essentially closer to narrative like stories or like short stories or something like that, everyone who's using them are essentially writers. There is like the target audience of Twine and stuff. And so they have just a proof button where it's like gets you the entirety of your story, but on a single page and just the text that's being shown to users. Mm-hmm. It's not perfect because it does include things like there's specific codes that has to be set of like you're setting like, sure. Which is the equivalent of sort of what DocAssemble ends up doing for like answering your questions. But even then, that's still useful because we could still see like, oh, there was one particular thing that I saw in here that was pretty not great to view, like the inline ifs, but most of the Mako tags would read probably pretty easily. But that's just sort of like a minor thing that I think would be pretty useful for people of just like, it would be very easy to like get a proofed copy and then that can get sent to. Ideally, I know like how Aleo does theirs is they have other content people who are like reviewing and making sure that like the content is right besides just Matt and making it such that Matt could literally just send, hey, it's this like page or like this text document that has all the things you need to go through. And then they could just go through it a lot simpler without having to look at all of the extra code or learn what DocAssemble is even doing.
Do you think the translation spreadsheet would kind of fill that need? Not that it has to be the translation spreadsheet, but the same text that you can see from that. Basically, all of the text content of an interview is what's shown there.
Kind of. The translation spreadsheet.
I know it has extra stuff that I probably want to take out. But
it has a lot of extra stuff, but it's completely unordered, right? Does it have like context surrounding it and everything?
There's no context, no.
Yeah.
Well, like not really. It is ordered, but it's not in context.
Yes, I think that's the more important part of like, it's not like it would be a thing that you could read through and it would make sense. Whereas the translation spreadsheet, like you don't know which options are associated with which sub-question text on the screen, right?
It's not always clear. Yeah. Like
I think that's the idea.
I think it descends, right? Like recursively, but even it's only like 2 depths, I guess. But it shows them like, oh, here's the question text, here's the first field, here's the options of the first field, then it goes to the next one. But you don't necessarily know where one starts, the next one ends, or the next one starts, or one ends and the next one starts.
Oh, okay.
So they are in order in that sense, as far as I can tell when I've looked through it. That's what my feeling is.
Okay. That's actually not okay. That's closer to that's closer to this than I thought it would be. And probably with like a little bit of small tweaking, we could just do like little question eliminators.
I had to write a little bit of code to read, to adapt it to run from the dashboard. So it's been a little while since I looked at it, but it basically just iterates over everything. And then you pull out the text. There's a function to get just the text back.
Cool. Yeah, but I think that's a good point. I think we could very easily get it to look a little bit something like this.
This is a great list, but one thing I'm noticing is it's a bit just like features, and I think we'll have levels of granularity. I'm wondering. Is there a zoomed out thing we should be thinking of? I don't know. Maybe it's best to start with the zoomed in stuff and then generalize and categorize. That sometimes I guess that's what you do with card sorting sometimes. But I know, like, hey, if we decided one of our goals is let people see the content, we wouldn't necessarily have to have spec'd out all the features of that now, right? Or even have a solution for that. But we would know that was an important thing. Maybe that's the question, is like, should we be thinking like, what are the pain points of the Weaver? What challenges do people have a bit? And then come up with solutions to some of the challenges. And they can be whatever level of granularity pops in people's head, but then at least we've done the top level thing of saying like, identifying what our main goals are with the Weaver, with the playgrounds experience being improved.
Yeah, and I think that's fun.
I don't mean to redirect us from like the specifics or your list, but maybe, and also I didn't see how long your list is. Maybe we should go through all of your ideas and that will give us more direction.
That was not my intention with just that. It was more of just trying to spark something else. I don't know how to run this. So yeah.
No, well, that's a question, I guess. So yeah, like I'd love to learn about all of your ideas. I want to make sure, you know, it's in the right context. Because if we all agreed, like, hey, that's a goal, let's start coming up with solutions. We could save this time for the part that we don't already all agree on, in other words. But how many more things?
That was really it. And honestly, I think I like your idea of general of just trying to like point out pain points specifically. And the only other thing that I had on here was just like GitHub is a pretty big pain point. And so I had a lot of like more specific things that like we're missing that we need for GitHub to be more useful, like diffs and like empty branches and being able to like pip working with GitHub better. So you could like, we don't have to use PyPy and stuff like that. But that was just sort of like the main part of, I like the idea of at least focusing on just like, hey, like, yeah, GitHub integration. If we want that to be easier, we could put a lot of effort into making that better for people.
And I probably can't get a lot out of my students, but maybe we could try to survey people and say what are things. We could put a survey on the DocuSimple channel, actually, couldn't we? And say like, hey, how important are these things to you? And then work from there too. That might encounter, there's still a subset of people who are active enough in DocuSimple to use that channel, but there's tons of learners. It's lots of enthusiastic learners. So
it's a lot of learners. Yeah, that's a good point. I was trying to think if it's slightly biased towards like a particular type of learner. Like I do still like, it's sort of like, I think our like cohort is a great example of, I think like our target audience in general. But I do think like our cohort is getting good enough with DocuSimple that like they are still like can do they like are still learning and stuff, but they're good enough that like a lot of the things that might prevent other people from getting into DocuSimple, they sort of get and are already okay with. So
that's true. Well, I could either well, we could always share it with students and say, hey, or you know what, even if they're no current students or past students are going to answer it, we can still think ahead in terms of like next semester, we're going to give them this goal from the beginning and maybe get them a chance to earn extra credit or something.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. All right. Well, what is the way, you said you had a Miro board. Let's take, what kind of things did you have on the Miro board? Were you just pulling up one for us to start with? Is a blank one for now?
Yes. And that's like, if we still to do that, I think.
That makes sense to me, because then we could start just like, we could do some independent stuff and see what shows up.
Yes. Sorry, thank you for taking all of it so far.
I decided not to, just where I had questions, I copied what you had on your notes because you had so many more details. I was like, maybe you could copy paste.
That was my plan. Sorry, I was hoping to like just put a lot of that out there, and once things get rolling, I can start copying pasting things.
Right.
I know I had a suggestion of doing a specific thing, and now I'm also thinking through like what would be my list, and I'm trying to see if I were going to try, if those would be good things to discuss, and if it would fit in the framework I was just saying. I've had to organize it, our discussion, but maybe Miro is the place to start. Oh, Mural. Sorry.
Mural. Sorry. Yeah, so it is. Okay, it should be. I think it's anonymous. I don't know. It's one of those things that I like literally got on it. It had me answered like 5 questions before I could do anything, which I thought was not great.
No worries. Okay, I'll join.
But I think the same ideas are just the same, basic ideas are the same, used to be.
I guess I'll do it with my Gmail account.
Is it making you log in? I was hoping it
It is making me log in, but that's okay.
Okay. I was hoping it would let people be anonymous.
Where's the link?
Chat.
Oh, chat, sorry. I
Chat,
closed
try
chat
it.
and preferences.
I did. If you don't want to log in, try the second link. There's members and visitors, and there's, oh, visitors only let you join the mural. That's fine.
So maybe we could
Oh,
start.
no, it only lets you view it. Fine, sorry. First link is fine. Sorry.
So like some of the things that I have thought of, and which we had on our list already, I guess, from last week's discussion, were like letting you insert code with a template. So is that a pain point or is it an idea? It's more of an idea.
I feel like we could be extrapolating the pain point from that idea is just like, is discoverability sort of the thing there? Where it's like, how do I do X thing, and easily being able to get that into an interview?
Well, one of the things that I find is like if I have a complicated example block and I click insert, then I have to change the variable name, for example, in 10 places in the example. And I see students creating interviews where they've inserted example blocks and they're using the default variable name. That seems like an easy one. It's more like, hey, there should be a question that pops up and said, what variable name is this going to be built around?
Okay.
But this was more of a meta question, which is like, is that an idea or is it a pain point? I think the answer is it's an idea.
That's a bit closer, I think.
Yeah, it's like a solution more than it is a. Okay, so another thing that I'm thinking of, and this is more a meta kind of question, is what do we envision the right paradigm for our ideal editor to be? So is it a visual editor that doesn't prevent you from manipulating code? Is it a code first editor? Because we're not trying to replicate something like Gavel. Is it a fully graphical editor? And that gets to like the idea of the flowchart metaphor, also document, and a lot of other kinds of editors we've been comparing ourselves to. Like, and we say like one of those might be like form tools like Google Forms and Microsoft Forms. They have sections and screens, right? And we would probably have a higher level of abstraction, but maybe, you know, and then you control order by rearranging them visually, right? But there's not a flowchart metaphor, they don't have that level of granularity. I think that's more where Gavel is too. You can build essentially a deep graph of connections and order of questions. It can be a graph, but they really just show you, hey, here's a bunch of questions. And you can rearrange it up and down, or you can have a go-to button that takes you somewhere else. A jump point. I don't think we want to do that because that kind of ruins the power of declarative, like our interview order block concept that I don't think we should abandon just because we have a different editing metaphor.
Yeah.
Which was that last one? Sorry, I was trying to apply to be able to edit.
Well, what do you think of, the question is like, what's the right metaphor for the playground? Is that a good question for us to discuss now? And if so, where does that fall on this line of, I'm trying to think if we're going to try to start, okay, let's do 10 minutes of brainstorming and coming up with cards. What level of concept should we be doing this at? And this was one more example of a thing we could talk about. I'm like, well, is this a brainstorm thing? Is this a, yeah. Is it a solution? Pain point? I do keep coming back to the fact that maybe we didn't have the right people.
You're sharing your screen still, Bryce, just
Oh.
FYI.
Yes. Okay, sorry.
No worries.
Maybe we're not the
sure.
right group to talk about pain points. Maybe we just should start coming up with solutions.
I don't think we're the wrong group to talk about pain points. I think the right approach is first to talk about pain points before talking about solutions. So solutions are exciting and they'll still come up in the conversation anyway, but I think focusing on pain points. I
Yeah,
think the
usually
more
that's where we
specific
start.
we could get, the better it would be, but I think we have to start general. Like
Yeah,
we just can't do everything at once.
right. And then we have to think about like, where's our next place going to be too? Bryce, is the second link a different board? Because when I refresh, I don't see the same things.
It's the same board. I think I used the first link. I thought the second link was like, it was like visitor. And so I sent it before I finished reading all the stuff, but it was visitor and you can't edit. And so you always made it not as useful as it used to be.
But why don't I see any of your cards?
Why can't I?
Okay, maybe we should pose a couple.
If this is
questions.
just not as useful, we could just not do this and try and take it in notes instead.
I do.
Yeah.
I think it's one thing that's nice about the cards is we can place them and then group them. Okay, the second link is different from the first link. That's the difference. And I think what happened is when I made an account, it took me away
But
from
I can't edit.
the card.
Did you use the first link, Michelle? Because the second link lets you in as a visitor and it looks like you're a visitor on my screen. It says visiting Rhino and the visitors can't edit anything.
Right, but I can't.
And I can't change that. I
So,
can't change visitors.
so I need to make a mural account. Okay.
Yes, yeah. Which is what I was trying to find a way to avoid that. It looks like they have changed everything, so you can't do that anymore. So, I don't know.
All right, let's start with our first question being like, what are some things that are hard about using the playground now?
Yeah.
We'll start with that and we'll just see what comes up out of that. We'll spend like 10 minutes right coming up with cards, or unless people run out of stuff before that.
I think that sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll keep an eye on it.
Maybe we should have invited some more people to this brainstorming session, because I think this is a good structure. It's okay though. Kind of fits into the people who answered my question about the Weaver. It would have been probably nice to invite them.
Well, I mean, this isn't the last day ever, so we're doing this.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
I mean, we can learn more about.
Yeah, good to.
We can start this, and then I'm more thinking like, yeah, what will come next? Don't worry.
I don't know if it's the right way of doing this, but I have been trying to look at remember and like specific things that people have, like issues that people have run into, and like things in the like coding help channel.
I'm kind of realizing I'm writing down solutions with the phrase of this is something you can't do. I'll try to generalize them. Hmm. And we're thinking about the playground editor, right? Not just like things that are tricky in DocAssemble. I would say the event system was good.
I'm thinking
Well,
general developer or author experience,
Yeah.
which includes some of those things, but I guess like a solution wise probably will be limited to like the editing part, because otherwise it's like we end up with, okay, let's rewrite DocAssemble. But I don't think we should limit like the problems that authors have only to the playground though.
Okay.
I cut you off, Michelle, sorry.
I lost track while you were talking. It might come back up. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe we can use okay. As we're going, we might come up with solutions. We could probably just write some ideas down too, right? Or maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should try to triage. I don't know.
I think trying to triage and then
Then say-
solutions from like the ultimate triage, because I think it's one of those like, oh, what if this problem might end up being like actually a different problem than like what we're thinking of when we're writing it down
right.
after
Yeah.
talking to people. So think it's been about 10 minutes. If everyone's, I think they've got everyone, or if everyone thinks they have everything.
Yeah,
So right now, we're specifically looking at the editor, right? Not other behavior?
So I think we had said any sort of author specific part. I wasn't limiting my stuff to the editor, but I think it's things that I like could be an issue with the editor. I'm not really sure. I haven't been limiting myself to the editor because I feel like there's only so many things. I ran out of things specific to the editor, like 4 in. So I was thinking, I was trying to focus still on the like author experience specifically, as opposed to like additional features we could put into Docsable or like new cool things or like other things that like users have issues that users would have an issue with Docsable. I was trying to focus more on issues that like authors would have issues with in Docsable.
Okay.
Sorry,
I'm not complete. Yeah.
I think it's okay if we're not specific.
Yeah.
It's all right. I'm not worried about
that. Okay.
All right. So, see, I saw there was some classifying happening already. Do we want to spend some time grouping, coming up with headings and then grouping our cards? And then we can prioritize and triage.
Yeah, sure. I'm
okay.
Trying to go through and read y'all's
groups a little bit more broadly. I like some of the grouping I'm seeing. So I guess we could talk about like pure editing, well, I don't know, what would we call? Okay, like you're seeing your actual code. That's the question, right? Well, that's not really right. Measuring. All right. No one has a heading yet for like preview and running the code. Right, I'm going to make that one. All right, I'm going to move it down here.
For what? So that to me is exploration.
What? Oh, that's not what
So the general category of exploration.
That is, I don't think I'm with Quinn. That's slightly, there's like I guess it's exploration in terms of like it could be that, but I think it's distinct. It's worthwhile to distinguish like exploring the code versus like exploring just the like user facing part of the internet.
What do you mean?
So I like previewing one question isn't exploration to me, because it's one question that you found, but you want to see what it looks like and what it does. Yeah. And it doesn't seem to be related to testing stuff to me at all.
No, but exploration, maybe we should.
It's okay to have overlapping categories.
I'm just trying to figure out how to make this broad.
Because there's no reason to make it
sure,
broad. Yeah.
Sure. But for example, no way to preview the output without running the interview from the beginning. I see. I did one like that. Okay, I'll get rid of.
No, we don't have to get rid of anything yet. That's not our
Sure,
task now.
sure.
It's just to group stuff. Okay, and then I would say I'm going to make a new heading for some of my questions about refactoring, changing code. And there should be one about like, I guess we have, should there be a whole topic for examples, maybe like a generating code? I'm going to move discovery from that. Ouch, too much typing. So it's like basically it's the whole world of. All right.
Where's my too many keyword, too many example blocks thing?
That's
Oh,
under
options.
discovery right now.
The discovery. Okay.
So actually, it comes to my mind that example's not really that helpful a concept in terms of an editor. You don't see very many other editors that have
But
just
we're
like
making our
example
own.
blocks for stuff.
Yeah, but I like that there are example blocks. Like, we're not trying to make an existing editor, right?
Nope, we're not.
Okay.
I'm not saying get rid of the examples, but the framing of, hey, here's a list of examples is kind of unusual. It makes more sense to say, here are all the things you can do. And then if they're examples for them, great. But the fact that you're browsing through a list of examples free form is kind of weird.
Okay.
That's just my idea. Jumping into a
Okay.
solution is again there, but
That's fair. I was gonna say, I don't know if that's exactly, I end up like, it's other things that I was looking through with a lot of the Twine stuff earlier. Like, there are just sometimes lists of examples. I don't know if I'm misunderstanding what you mean by having them be like, oh, here's a list of things you can do, and there are examples if that helps. I'm not sure if I'm misunderstanding what you mean by that. But
yeah, that is what I said, but you're saying that doesn't make sense, the second concept.
I think it makes sense. I just don't quite know if I understand what you mean. Like I have seen often where there are examples and there's just like, here's like a cookbook of things you can do. That's not too unheard of. I think it's weird to put it directly in the editor as it is, but I don't think that's itself by a weird concept. Maybe that's, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm saying like making that the really prominent thing, like here's just a bunch of snippets of code you might use. I'm wondering if there's a more useful thing to put in that space in the editor.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not saying get rid of the examples.
Okay, sorry, I think I was just
like I would say it's like lower in the hierarchy of things people need than seeing all the things they can do, which they can get to from the playground or from the documentation page. But then when you get there, there's too much content to go through. With the examples, there's too little. And it's just like a weird balance.
Okay.
What's green mean?
I always just make my own little color. I do a specific color for me whenever I first make them, and we can recolor them however we want. I just do it so I can easily glance and be like, oh, I've moved that one already, etc.
Okay, sure.
Any other? So I think we've kind of organized everything, right?
I think
we finished that. So we basically have a few different top level categories. Maybe we should think about those now. Okay, so we have a list of specific bugs. I feel like we probably don't need to discuss that. Although
well,
maybe we also pull some things out.
Not necessarily bugs, but some of these are complaints, right? Like you can't push to specific repos isn't a bug, but it is a bad user experience.
So let's think about that as its own category, maybe version control.
Bad user experiences.
No,
No,
Version
Right.
control is a separate thing. I think is good. I had a separate like deploy
Sure.
version thing specifically that it fits really better in there.
what does can't select theme mean?
editor theme.
What does that mean? You mean like changing to dark mode?
Colors,
You like
yeah.
dark instead of light?
Or whatever, if you want to have like
No, I
vampire
just meant as an
theme
example.
or whatever, like editors have color themes, like,
Okay.
like, you know,
Like in VS Code.
syntax highlighting themes, right?
Yeah.
Regex search. Okay.
So,
Let's see. We have a search, another search one, which is the global search and replace. Oh, that is
Or if you can,
already
or selecting multiple, it's not global, where's missing global search and replace?
there. It's over here under refactoring and changing code. That's where I was thinking it went, but maybe we should have the
Okay.
search, breakout search as its own topic.
Here, multiple, no, that's fine,
refactoring and search are pretty hand in hand, I feel.
yeah.
I guess you could just change it to be search because a lot of refactoring is search. But I think that's kind of, it's the same thing either way. At least I'm understanding it as the same thing.
That's
Sure.
the kind of refactoring I've been envisioning, is only really about searching and changing the names of things. So
It's pretty much the only thing we could do with Python, yeah. Or Python and like the weird multi-language setup that Docasymple has.
yeah. Okay, so I don't think we should have a general category or an other. We got rid of other already. Let's see if we can figure out where we can make those fit.
The other was underneath a broader category anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so list of variables is overwhelming. Okay, we actually had that somewhere under discovery. Discovery is kind of vague too.
Well,
You
list
can
of
reference it.
variables, list of keywords is different than list of variables. Hard to discover keywords.
But discovery, I think that the unifying thing I'm thinking of when I
Yeah.
wrote discovery in mine was like, there exists a feature in Docasymple, but you don't know that it's there. It's not necessarily that it's hard to use, or you don't know how to use it, but you just don't know it exists. And so I think those, like for, if it's a Docasymple keyword, then I think that's like, that falls under discovery, definitely. If it's, and then that also aligns with like Docasymple functions, like our assembly line secret variables, or not secret, but like magic variables and stuff like that.
Sure.
I think I'm viewing that as all of the same sort of discovery, but I don't know if that makes, are you viewing it differently?
Was there something
Well,
else that
there's,
you meant,
it
Michelle? Or are you
said,
just
it
seeing
said the
card?
list, it says the list of variables, functions, etc. And I
Yeah.
thought that meant in your interview. So list
Yeah.
of Docasymple.
Well, it's mixed in
Docasymple.
one list. That was my card, and I was thinking of both parts, but it tends to mostly be a problem with you have a lot of classes, and you're importing. Like you let me see. Actually, how long is this list of things?
Yeah, I'll pull up the example on the screen.
I'm logged into the Weaver, so that's the interview I have. That's importing a lot of other stuff, but still, like,
Okay,
Oh,
well,
you can't find it.
I'd like to differentiate between Docasymple keywords, etc., and your own interview keywords, etc.
Was
okay, we have a more
your-
useful place to put it than general. That was I was trying to undo the general
Sure.
category.
I was gonna say, your specific
Okay.
thing is, it's a specific complaint on this little thing on the right side, right, Quentin? Like in the
Yeah, that
playground?
list of variables and values.
Yeah. And I think, Michelle, that's the issue, is that there is no distinguishing between Docasymple's variables and your variables and everything, because it's
Well,
everything. for some reason.
we can make that a thing. No distinguish.
We could add a card for that. I think it's just the one I had added that you're referring to, Michelle. I was talking about that list on the sidebar.
Okay.
And I'd like to see if we could put it in a more specific category than general.
I put it in discovering what you can do in DocAssemble, but it doesn't fit there because
That's supposed to be first. This won't be so much.
so
That's just
I don't know.
So multiple syntaxes, that's actually a really good point. I'm not sure. Current bad user experience.
yeah. I threw that. No, I threw that one in general because I had no idea. It's also not a thing we can really address as much, but it's
Yeah.
just like a thing that sort of sucks.
Yep. I mean, I think getting like YAML and Mako, fine. Or YAML and Jinja, fine. But then, and Python, sure. Okay. You want to have code, you need a code language. I'm glad it's at least not our own, not invented here language that Jonathan
Yeah.
came up with.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is like, if we could ditch Mako, which does very little,
Mhm.
switch it to Jinja, that would be a net benefit, I think.
Sure.
Because that was just path dependency. I think Jonathan started out saying, oh, there's all this stuff with people doing Mako in Markdown. So I can just use this existing library really easily. And then when he wanted to go to docx files, which he didn't start out with supporting, I think there wasn't a Mako in docx files. So he had to use Jinja there.
Gotcha.
But I don't think Mako does not do anything special in DocAssemble that couldn't be replaced with Jinja, I believe.
That makes sense.
Except that the Python Markdown is like, or sorry, Mako Markdown is pretty mature library. I was looking at this a little bit the other day. So like there may not be as mature a thing for Jinja, but oh, it doesn't matter too much.
Yeah.
All right, I'll add, that's fine. We'll have uncategorized. I think that's fair. Let me just, I'm gonna add.
That's
one.
to be categorized, right?
Okay. If we're thinking of like language design features, maybe. Yeah.
That's fair. I think that matches.
Oops. Let's see. What was I going to say? I was going to say obsolete stuff like LaTeX. It's not no one uses it, or that no one should ever use it. It's just, what's that?
Where are we?
You can do LaTeX and DocAssemble interviews.
Oh yeah, that's the way that the Markdown templates get turned into RTF, and then they get converted to docx files. It's the first thing DocAssemble ever could do. It's just
Okay.
that's how it handles doing that.
Okay.
You can have your own LaTeX templates in there and stuff, and then that's a huge dependency that you have to do for the Docker container. Maybe that's not the right thing for us to focus on though. But
Yeah, I think it's not good, I think.
Did exploring your own code get turned into managing multiple files, basically? I think that makes sense.
Yes, I have.
Well,
It got split into managing multiple files and search.
Okay, got it.
I see.
I think we got a
And
good
we
list
have a
of.
whole thing over here called exploration, like can only organize C blocks one way linearly, which is the exploring your own code.
I don't see that as the same idea, but they did use the same word.
Yes, I think that I do think that they're different. Well, actually,
I'm not sure I still don't know what exploration on its own means. But I'll get rid of the other exploring. It's empty now.
Well,
Is there another way to describe this? Is it more like,
exploring your own code is
visual
what it
metaphor?
looks like to me.
well, I guess how is
Interesting.
exploring?
saying that it's
Interview
not a term
flow.
that's accurate? I'm just saying they're different, totally unrelated ideas to me.
Is it within this? Are you talking about within the same file?
Just your own code. You have code. You want to be able to understand various things about it, right? You want to be
I
able
guess-
to
I guess
find
maybe
things
narrow
and
down-
explore how it works.
I guess narrow down various things, because just exploring the code, it can kind of be synonymous with like working with code. And right now that's all of DocAssemble is like working with your YAML and your Python code. And so it seems kind of broad when it's explore your code to do various things.
Yeah,
Like
like I
if-
might move this error testing in general one to debugging, right? Is that, maybe we could call that debugging and testing. I guess that's about exploring what your code, when it has errors, but it's not.
Yeah, I was thinking of it separate from debugging, but
I do think you don't just do it when you have errors, but
Is debugging and testing, they don't necessarily go together.
I think
Alright.
testing is
Yeah.
separate than debugging, but it's useful as a concept if we wanted to make the testing thing. But yeah, like debugging is like, you know, the error is there. How do you fix it? Sort of thing. Whereas I was thinking more of the general anxiety of if I change a variable name, it will break something. Like
Okay,
sort of the need for testing there was what I was thinking of. And I assume that's
and I think
Is that-
testing
is that-
also
yeah.
helps codify behavior, and it helps define behaviors sometimes. Like sometimes when you're exploring what behavior you want, writing like a demo, a test as it were.
all right, I'm gonna
Is the
move
way
a
to do
little
it.
bit here. Okay, so exploration, I can't see all of the code. Is that similar to managing multiple files? I think it's
Yeah,
exactly like one of the
Sure,
cards.
yep.
Okay. Now that I'm seeing this, all right, I see what. All right, there's some questions here about, there's some cards here about testing. There's 3 cards now about testing, if I put that green one back. And there's existing interview flow and then seeing the blocks together. I feel like that may be
So
one
seeing
thing
it might
about,
be a preview. Being
it
able to
could be
preview stuff.
preview, but I think we legitimately distinguish between previewing output and previewing the order of questions.
Okay,
They're very closely related, so maybe we should put them near one another and have it be like a subtopic of interview order control, viewing interview order.
I think that's good. That's actually makes me understand a lot more of what you meant by exploring, because that's like that is a way of
well,
how I would describe.
that is one thing about exploring, yeah.
Yeah.
So when we say debugging, we really mean the ability to inspect the interview state at any given time.
Yeah.
Sure.
Where I associated it more with the verb net in some sense, but yeah, I get it. It's different. Okay, I wonder if. Okay, so we don't have. A lot of this is not really on the editor experience in a traditional IDE. Like, so you had some ideas that I think we didn't make it on the board because they don't fit in one of our topics as pain points, but I think they are. One is syntax highlighting, linting of errors in real time.
Yeah, that's what I have as part of debugging. I think like error, I think I had it as error edit fix loop is too slow, as in like if you showed it on like it's a, or at least I imagine that being a fix, like that could be fixed by like inline linting and stuff like that.
I'll add that just to clarify without taking away your
Yeah.
card.
Yeah, I think
More of
that's
a
good.
solution.
So I do just want to point out that saying something like no real-time linting is basically saying this is a solution.
Yeah, no, I
It's
said
not
that.
stating a
for sure.
problem. Oh,
I
okay,
understand
sorry.
that.
I
It's
think
okay.
I think
There's a little
we're
mixing.
yeah, I think we're starting, which is fine. I think it's mostly as long as like we can come up with random various like no solution things and brainstorming. But I think we are getting to the point where we're starting to move towards it. I was going to say I think we got good categories, and I think we have a good understanding. Like all of us, we've talked through most of these, and we have a good understanding of them. And like if we wanted to start like, okay, like what's a solution to managing multiple files? Because there's a lot of different solutions that could come up.
Yeah.
That's gonna. I think this is probably the we're on a roll now where if we come up with a bunch of different solutions for all of these different problems, we can see which ones would work together and which ones wouldn't, and which ones might fix 5 different things at the same time, or something like that.
Okay, as long as we have a way to differentiate between the cards that are stating problems and the cards that are proposing solutions.
Yeah, I might go through and actually change all of mine to be reddish. And were you using yellow for solutions, Quentin? Because I like that too.
I was doing yellow
We
for
could use yellow for solutions.
or like things that are like borderline problems or maybe not problems.
Well, I think this is a really good board.
Green
We
can
should-
be a solution. What?
I think this is a great board and we shouldn't remove anything from it. But maybe one thing we often
No,
do in this
copy
kind
paste.
of brainstorming is then move to, okay, now we've gotten some categories. Maybe we triage which categories you think are most important, and then we start focusing on solutions for those, for the top level, the most important cards within that category. Does that feel helpful? I'm not saying get rid of any of our work, but before we start writing more solutions here, should we do prioritization?
That's a good idea, I think.
Do you want me to change your greens to reds too? Do you want a hand?
But
Sure.
before we start doing like more on this board, should we?
I'm just formatting. I'm just changing.
There's no
formatting.
color coding now at all. So like,
The color coding does not really mean much yet. It's
Oh,
so
okay.
if we were going to do color coding, it would be more for new stuff, right? So, and I'm saying maybe we won't do it on this board, or maybe
Okay.
we stick with the Miro board and just make a new area on the board. Or
that's what
maybe-
I was about. I was about to copy paste everything and just move it down.
Okay.
But I was going to say, are we
well-
thinking prioritizing because
Well,
I'm thinking I think the way would be to prioritize this as like prioritize the headings because we have like
Yeah.
all of our groups. Okay.
I was thinking prioritize which heading we wanted to focus on, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Well, maybe it doesn't.
I'm not sure because I think we might be able to say in each heading things that are more or less significant than other things, and I'm not sure it will be by heading. But
Well,
I'm not sure using
sorry.
the headings as the metric is as useful, but whatever.
Well,
It's a
yeah,
way
no,
to do it.
can you give an example of that? Because I think I'm thinking of it as more as like each of these individual things are like problems, but they're like trying to there were a lot of them were really specific, like this is the way it is now, and to fix that is going to be like potentially like changing like what each of these little problem statements actually looks like. And so like I don't know, sorry, I went on a bit. What's an example of you think would like trying to also sub prioritize each of the notes within headings? Like which ones would you think like you'd want to prioritize in different ways?
Well, for
And-
example, can't push to specific repos seems like a lower hanging fruit that has caused a lot of frustration. Like versus like can't see interview flow. That's a huge one, right? Like even though it is very frustrating, that's a much bigger ask, right?
Well, those are two different categories, though. Like, I still feel like what you're saying is version, like overall, when you say that, I hear version control probably has some lower hanging fruit, and in general is more important than like interview exploration, which I'd agree with. I think that's right, but I'm not sure I'm understanding what more we'd get from organizing individual cards versus just being able to prioritize like the headings.
I'm just saying that I don't know that different headings are great metrics for what to prioritize. Like, I'm not sure why we would pull out specific headings as opposed to prioritizing individual cards. Like you can format it by putting a border around it, like, or like we could format, hey, the ones that are in purple are the ones that we are more interested in working on first, or like, as opposed to like, hey, let's highlight this heading and work on all the stuff in it first. Like, I'm not understanding what we're going to be doing with specific headings that is valuable.
I think my view of how we do specific headings is that we like these are a few specific things, but like example, like testing. Obviously, there's a lot more that we can do with testing than just like hard to test modules and like testing in general. Like we have the entire Kiln for that, and there are a lot of other things that we can focus on in Kiln. But I think just being able to prioritize like, hey, testing and like Kiln is important, and we think it's more important than like these other things. That's good enough. Like that's sort of how I think we should be doing sprints, because it's a lot easier for a small team like us to focus on like one feature at a time than trying to do everything at once. But
sure.
Can we here, everybody choose a color and well, one that's visible, not that. All right. And you can put 3 check marks next to a topic that you think is the most important to prioritize. How does that sound?
Oh my God. So one check, we can pick 3
You get
topics.
three topics to put a check mark next to, and let's just see what people end up finding.
So these are the ones we feel are the most urgent.
Yeah.
Or the most impactful. Which one we feel the most impactful?
No metric, no way for you to say what you think it, how to control it, but
given that I would say, given this is we're thinking longer term here, I'd just go for impactful, as opposed to urgent.
it doesn't have to be. You don't have to decide. I'm just like, we're such a small group. This may or may not end up being useful, but sometimes it's helpful. We have about like 8 topics. If we choose the 3 most important one, that seems like a good way to figure out if we agree or don't agree and what's important. And we have for direction on where to look into more stuff.
I'm not good at this part. How do I even, where's the check mark?
It's under icons. It's the llama for some reason. You can use a different symbol. It's easier.
Oh, it's fine.
I'm sure these are in groups, but I'm not sure how. Oh, there we go.
Is this saying both of these, or you do a check mark for both of these? What's this arrow?
I'm just indicating that they're connected concepts. Doesn't necessarily mean you can't prioritize them separately. I was just trying to figure out if there was a way to group things on the screen without necessarily merging categories.
Wow.
But that's the only two that seem to be like so closely connected. Have you ever done any wireframing, Michelle, like in Figma, or like it looks like you can do some wireframing right here inside Mural as well?
Yeah, I think you can connect stuff with lines and stuff.
No, I mean in terms of like doing low fidelity interface mockups.
Oh, really? I've done a little bit of that in Figma.
Figma might be the better tool for that. But I'm just wondering,
There's also Canva. I mean, there's a bunch
Canva
of
can do
stuff.
that?
I think so.
Oh, I did not know that.
Canva. Wireframes. I think Figma really is like,
I think it's more targeted towards wireframes, and I think Canva's, you probably could do it with Canva, but my impression is Canva is more like
For posters and
oriented, like
yeah,
layout
maybe.
oriented, yeah.
Maybe.
let's see. Templates. They have, yeah, it looks like in Canva they have like a deep down category called website templates. Whereas Figma, everything is basically a website, I guess. Well, one thing I'm wondering, okay, this is interesting, just definitely to see like what people are prioritizing. It's kind of all, we've hit almost everything. The thing that doesn't seem to be a huge pain point for people is like working with multiple files in the playground, which maybe none of us are heavy users of the playground, but probably the people who are the lightest users of the playground don't work in that many files. So maybe that's not a huge issue. The language stuff, I guess people kind of are resigned to. Testing, and obviously we think testing is important. We've been doing a lot of work on testing.
Yeah. I mean, there's other stuff for it right now. Like,
yeah,
to me, testing is also part of previewing the code, but I don't know.
I agree with you there, and I was gonna say I put my check mark next to previewing because I thought it was like it's what people spend probably more time on, even though testing is also really important. Like when you're writing the interview, you probably spend more time on previewing and less like what we think of as testing.
Yeah.
So
But I find interview order is the part of previewing that people spend the most time struggling with. Like, you know, they do a lot of glancing back and forth, but I think it is a harder problem to tackle. So, like, I don't know. I was thinking about impactful versus there's kind of what we can tackle.
yeah, no, that's totally fair. Yeah, I'm just trying to summarize a little bit like what things look like. No worries about. Like, I don't want to over analyze what people's choices were based on, but it does seem like we probably need to work, like the things that people are most interested in is like some metaphor that lets you, or button to click to see a question is important for every people. And then being able to see some way to see like the order the questions are going to be in and understand that. And obviously that's different from the declarative interview order block because questions can pop up that you don't expect dynamically, right?
Mhm.
And then debugging as also something that's very important to people that we could dive into more. The code generation part doesn't seem to be as urgent to anybody else as it was to me, but and the search and replace stuff, no, not a lot of votes there either. Let's see.
Well, I think it's like search and replace is a really nice, easy thing to implement. Like we can just get a code mirror plugin. Like they exist, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure.
These are separate.
At
from-
least for individual files. It's right that there's a problem with like implementing it globally across interview files, but
Yeah, we have such a small team that even if
Mhm.
something is easy and you're like, okay, let's allocate an hour to figuring out the research. Let's implement an hour to putting it in. And then how many
there's
hours
also
of testing does it take to get?
there's also an existing solution for global search and replace, which is to pull it locally if that's something you are very passionate about, right?
Yeah,
Whereas, like
Mhm.
previewing blocks is not a thing.
There's no way to do it locally, is your point. Yeah. So power users can work around that issue.
Mhm.
All right. I wonder any insights that this.
Though it is a big pain point, like for people who are not power users. So I'm just saying there's an existing solution.
That's a good point. Do you think that there's anything we can draw from this? I mean, like one thing I'm thinking of when I was talking about wireframing, well, it feels like a next step is to like, what are some major infrastructure changes or choices for us to make that would let us advance our goals, knowing that our biggest pain points that we see are around previewing the output and being able to interactively explore the order of questions easily with a quick recycle and then debugging and understanding the current state of the interview stack essentially and why questions are shown. And then linting, I guess, is another issue. So those are some of the biggest pain points that we've identified on our team. And those would be affected quite a bit, depending on what kind of editing metaphor we chose, right? Or prioritized, at least. I think we can't get rid of a text-based metaphor entirely, because then we have to control a lot of things of the editing experience and the contents of the YAML file if we were going to say we're going to just totally take it over.
Mm.
But
I don't think it's reasonable to make a completely visual.
and there wouldn't, I think, be a lot of value there in us doing that.
Yeah.
Because there is an existing visual editor that's open source, A2J Author. And there's an existing editor that has a small subset of DocAssemble's features, Gavel, which is available for people to use for free
Mhm.
in nonprofits. And it seems likely it will stay that way.
Mhm.
I mean, I think Nora just runs one server for Documate for nonprofits. There's one A2J server. So I don't think it's a huge expense for her. I think there's probably support costs to it, but
Mhm.
I don't think it'll go away. So we don't really have to replace Gavel either, but yeah. I guess what I'm wondering is, should we kind of come up with our ideal look at an abstract level, what we think of the ideal playground would look like, and then figure out how can we work towards that given the existing constraints we have, which is seeing what plugins work with CodeMirror and or whether it's worth moving to Monaco, figuring out what we can do with our own coding ability to create stuff from scratch. Does that feel like a good place for us to think next? Gathering examples and or drawing our own wireframes of our ideal front-end experience, and then figuring out, can we do this, accomplish this task within that, and have that inform our choice?
think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Has everyone seen? I was trying to see if I had a login for Gavel, and I don't seem to have a working one.
I literally tried making a free account right before this too, but I was a bit hesitant from the like, enter your credit card info. If you cancel before 7 days, you won't pay us $200. And I was like, I don't want to risk that.
Don't do that. We
Yeah.
should be able to reach out to Dorna and ask for an account. I've done that and already have pre-committed to doing it with my students next semester, but I just didn't make one for myself. And I've had one in the past, but it looks like it's expired. Has everyone used Power Automate before?
No.
Do we want to stop here? We've hit an hour and a half.
That was, yeah, the original plan was to stop here. And then, like, we could sit and let this marinate for a bit. And now that we sort of like have prioritized and thought of a bunch of things, and next, like you said, the next time we should be able to come back and have a better, like, focus specifically on like, okay, what are some like UIs and concrete things that we could change to make to address those other things.
Okay. Let me take a look at one thing here, which is maybe I can show you what Power Automate looks like. Because I was thinking, everyone's used Microsoft Forms or Google Forms. They are really similar to one another. I think everyone's at least used Google Forms. Great. Forms.
Have you used the create stuff? No.
Have you, Michelle?
The create stuff? I don't think so.
Have you made a Google form before?
Oh, yes, Google Forms. Sorry, lost track of what we were.
Okay. This is Power Automate. There's another tool that's closer to what DocAssemble does, which is called, I forget what it's called, actually. What is it called? Power Apps. I've only really I've made some workflows here that are only for my class, so there shouldn't be anything, which are just experimental ones. You don't need to actually use this, worry about anything private being here. So there's a timeline metaphor in Power Automate. All the tasks are sequential. But you could imagine organizing a YAML files blocks into cards like this, right? Where there's a preview and then you click on it and you can do various things. And those things might be in seeing the code and editing it manually. And this happens to be pretty gnarly JSON. Our YAML, I think, is easier to read. And then I think when you do make manual changes in the JSON here in Power Automate, you no longer get to see the nice little preview, which does the same thing, which I think is a fair way for us to kind of think about like progressive enhancement, right? We make the things that we can render for you nice and pretty. If we can't, you still get to see the code and change whatever you want. So pretty simple. The plus lets you add new blocks, which I kind of like that too. There's parallel branches, and that's where it breaks down. And when you get to the complexity of something like a DocAssemble interview.
Yeah.
Because I don't think flowcharts are great for that. So I don't know if I like this metaphor for ordering blocks. Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah. Like, I don't think I would love this if this were what I were faced with as an alternative to the playground. That I don't think that would feel great. If I had a question block and it had a little thing in the corner that was like preview, and that would fold out at the bottom and I could see what that looked like, or at the top and I could see what that looked like and interact with it.
So to you, you'd prefer like a code first view with the ability to preview.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm our target audience, but I think so, especially because DocAssemble really is down to the code. Like it's, I think one of its strengths is that it's text-based. Because it allows you to get so granular.
Yeah. What would you think about, because the way I've been thinking about it is not necessarily as like as fancy, but like I think the like I go back and forth between like, oh yeah, something like this that's fully laid out and not. But I think the thing that mostly gets me is the fact that blocks are this. Like DocAssemble does have strong delimiters between its question blocks and the YAML. They have nothing to do with anything above or below. And like the only thing they're sequential, so you can like so it can look from the bottom up, but that's the only reason like ordering matters at all. And besides for that, they're completely independent of everything else. You could just look at one block at a time and stuff like that. With that, like if it was like, here's a block, it's free text within that block, but the blocks were sort of stronger UIs than just the triple dashes, with that.
That I made, yeah.
Okay.
That might make more sense. And no sequential
No arrow pointing down, that kind of
arrows.
lies to you
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
The next thing.
But being able to collapse blocks, I can definitely see being attractive.
Okay.
Because what that means to me, right, like is this is not a code mirror feature, but you might have a code mirror instance for each individual time you look at the code.
Yeah, but then you need to be able to
Probably
copy
is
all the
mirror,
code.
actually.
You need to be able to like bulk copy an entire file. So that also needs to be a view that's easy to get to.
Yeah,
And also you need to be able to search through the whole file. So like it does need to have the metaphor of this is.
Search is easy. Like we could still do search. Search is. I feel like we should be able to search multiple like things if we split them up like that. Like and if we can't, then I agree it doesn't work.
yeah.
But there's nothing stopping us.
Just gonna do a little
Also,
check on something because I'm seeing like, okay, this is a pretty good size interview I just worked on. Not big, but it's like it's like the size of a real thing, right? Let's just see how many blocks there are. I'm just curious. So it looks like there are 40 blocks in this, relatively small and straightforward interview. Okay. Because there's the search thing is like, oh, well, what do we do to optimize your ability to scroll through and find something too? That's what I was thinking, basically.
yeah, a lot of people
Or
don't
yes.
even use the search, they just scroll through.
Which is actually
And
really
there should
hard
be
in
a-
DocAssemble because the blocks
is.
are so similar looking to one another,
Yeah.
and there's so much distracting stuff around it.
Yeah. Also, I do just want to say, it may be that CodeMirror has improved a lot since the last time I played around with it, but each editor was fairly heavy. Like you couldn't have like 40 editors
Yeah,
on the screen.
that would be. I agree. That's
was-
the thing that I would be a bit. Even at 40 is lower than I thought it would be. I thought it would be a few hundred, but like 40 is a lot of different editors. All of the other examples I've seen of like CodeMirror and even Monaco stuff has like max 3 or 4 on the screen.
I would imagine if we did go that route, we wouldn't show more than one at a time, but I don't know what that means in terms of how many have to be loaded to work.
I would get frustrated if I could only see one at a time, I will say. There are lots of times when I want to see it, be able to get a broader view of the code. I would love to be able to rearrange them vertically more easily, though. That's something that I would
To
really
move a
like.
block around.
Yeah.
So like the key would be to make sure it's clear that like you're changing the priority of the blocks, not the order of the blocks.
Yeah. Agreed. But I would want to be able to see the contents in more than one block at a time.
Oh, interesting. New code mirrors. Like I don't think this is in the old one, but I'm just looking at like the code mirror. There's an example. There's tab handling. They have collapses. Like you can collapse sections, and I'm assuming you could get that to collapse YAML blocks.
Cool.
Which sort of addresses what we're talking about.
You want to show it to
some of
us?
that,
Bryce,
yeah.
and see what it looks
Yeah,
like?
sure,
I'm
sure, sure.
curious to
Does
see.
a bit, it doesn't give them each a like distinctive.
Yeah, like I have
Color.
to, yeah, I'd have to see what we could do, or like if there's other stuff we could do, but because I was trying to see if there was like, if there would be a way to somehow split things up, but right now it's like, there's if else, and you can just collapse that if, and I'm assuming that I think works if you
Oh,
just,
interesting. I like the little ellipses there.
yeah. Like, yeah, it would, yeah, I'm assuming we'd be able to do it for the whole thing. But I don't know.
I don't know
if
how you
now-
can collapse that else then.
Apparently you
But
can't collapse
okay.
the else once you've collapsed the if.
Yeah,
That I don't love.
can you do both? You can't do both.
You just have to do it in the right order.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
So basically we would like, it'd be nice to be able to enhance that with some preview of the most semantically relevant content from the block, which for a code block you couldn't really figure out, but for a question block, I guess it would be the question text.
Yes, yeah, yeah. If it was like
Well,
code block, first line of a code block or something.
I don't know. I might use its ID, right? Isn't that what IDs are for? I don't know. Whatever.
That's what IDs are for, and I guess that would encourage people to write IDs, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we could fall back from the ID to the question. I don't know. Not everybody writes their interviews with the Weaver, and if you don't, then adding an ID for every question is not a habit a lot of people get into.
Well, but
It
it
is
would
obviously
encourage
the-
that habit. So
I would
like,
say we should probably like not make that the only thing. We shouldn't force people to do it just because we think it's better. But we could easily say if there's an ID, always use the ID, and if there's none, use the question. Maybe not easily. I say easily, but that's probably a lie. Well, the question is like, would code mirrors features there do it for us? Or would we need to do something on our own to get the metaphor we want?
I think
this
we
is
would be
something-
doing our own thing.
If we wanted to go that far, probably, yeah.
I mean, we could do something like, reduce it to one line high. And just show the line of the question. But if the question is not on the same line as the question keyword, or if it's multiple lines with if statements and things like that, that's another reason the question isn't necessarily the best choice.
Yeah, you're saying if there's more than one part of the question block, I see what you're saying. If there's the first line's an if, then you've lost the relevant part of it. That's a very specific level of nuance to get into, I think, probably though, in terms of like the editor flow, but maybe it's the kind of choices we're gonna have to start making soon. So who knows?
I think that one's going to come pretty early on, yeah.
Let's see. It's okay with me, like, because questions are never that long. Or if we just don't collapse beyond the question, whatever it is, even if it is really long, like, okay, that's a choice you made as the author. Now you're stuck with it. It's only going to show up as one wrapped line on your interview. But if you wanted to write 30 lines of text, you no longer have that vertical real estate that comes back from collapsing. Well, that was already helpful because it's a big early choice for us to make. Like, do we try to use cards and simplify the experience, or do we try to progressively enhance the text while making the text the most important and prominent feature? So I guess this is a good place to stop probably. We've definitely kind of run out of steam, but maybe I'll add a screenshot here of Power Automate so people can keep thinking about that, maybe with one of these with the preview shown. Can we put that in the Miro? You had a link to the Miro board, Bryce, with whatever one that's easy for us to jump
The
in.
view,
and
the
not be
view
logged in.
one.
Yeah.
How about both of them, the view and the edit? Because
Sure.
that way still accessible if you're not on your home computer, but
iPad 2.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for now. This is, I mean, it feels far away for us to make some of these changes, but this is good. One thing it didn't really do, interestingly, is tell me more about what we should do with the Weaver, but maybe we'll get there as we keep diving in on this.
Yeah, that is fair. It's there.
I guess we didn't get into much of the assembly line specific kind of challenges, which is where the Weaver is most relevant, I guess. It's part of it.
interesting.
Like our question library stuff, we could have talked about that, but we didn't. The only template insert into code, we just had no one really voted for that besides me, or had more specific kind of pain points there. But that would be basically where the question library would be useful.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the part that overlaps with the Weaver. But okay.
That's what I thought.
Enough for now. Unless anyone else has any closing
Okay.
thoughts.
No.
That's great.
Great.
That was awesome.